Shall we start, sir?
Yeah. Proceed, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Myself, Chandrakant Gore, of Psychology Department, and convener of this webinar, welcome everyone with unreserved enthusiasm. Please note some instructions. If you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the chat box. We will bring them up during presentations, and we will also have time for questions at the end. Sri Bhonendra College, Karkala is an arts, science and commerce college founded in 1960 and affiliated to Mangalore University. Sri Bhonendra College has a well-deserved reputation for delivering high-quality education at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. The college is sponsored by the Academy of General Education, Manipal, founded by late Dr. T.M.A. Pai, the Wizard of Manipal and visionary whose farsightedness transformed a barren land into a temple of learning. The college is now celebrating its Diamond Jubilee year and imparting high-quality education from kindergarten to post-graduation. During this unexpected scenario, this is a small try to foster, shape, and to enhance individual skills, knowledge, and initiate to ascertain their maximum efficiency and compliance. Now, we have with us our chairperson, Dr. Manjunath Ekotian, Revered Principal of College, resource person, Dr. Padmini Pai, moderator of this webinar, Dr. Vani Ballad. We wish a very warm welcome to all of you to this program. We shall start the program with our customary prayer of Mother Saraswati, the embodiment of knowledge. May I request Manisha to render the same.
Shri Saraswati Namostute. Shri Saraswati Namostute. Varade Shri Saraswati Namostute. Varade Shri Saraswati Namostute. Paradevate Shri Saraswati Namostute. Shri Saraswati Namostute. Varade Shri Saraswati Namostute. Paradevate Shri Pati Gauri Pati Guru Guha Vinuti Vidyuvate Shri Saraswati Namostute. Paradevate Shri Saraswati Namostute.
Thank you, Manisha. We have with us the backbone of this institution, a statue of knowledge and an originator of multifarious notions, our Honorable Principal, Dr. Manjunath. We have with us the backbone of our institution, a statue of knowledge and an originator of multifarious notions, our Honorable Principal, Dr. Manjunath Ekotian. Sir, on behalf of all, I welcome you wholeheartedly and request you to address the gathering from your presidential chair. Sir, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers of this webinar, Dr. Padmini Pai and Dr. Vani Ballal, coordinator of this webinar, Mr. Chandrakant Gore, my technical team headed by Divaksh Prabhu, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I welcome you all to this wonderful webinar sponsored by Psychology Department. Ladies and gentlemen, as is evident from the number of participants, registered for this webinar. Sri Bhuvanendra College has a well-deserved reputation for delivering premier education at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. This year, the college is celebrating its Diamond Jubilee year. Chandrakant has rightly said it. As a part of these celebrations, we have hosted a series of webinars on various topics for all streams of study. Due to the present scenario of pandemic, education has changed dramatically with the distinctive rise of e-learning. So, devoting our quarantine time to self-education makes a sense. Besides helping to boost our career, during this uncertainty, learning a new skill can give us a sense of enrichment that will help to cope with anxiety engendered by this epidemic. Moreover, maintaining integrity of character, resoluteness of will, mental resistance to doubt or discouragement is not an easy job. We need the help of true professionals in these testing times. Keeping these ideas in mind, the Department of Psychology of our college has hosted an international webinar on identifying your strength. This is a unique program with the objective to build self-confidence, enhance self-esteem, and improve one's overall personality by enabling the participants through sensitizing them about identifying their inner strength and reprint it as to improve their overall personality. We are fortunate enough to have Dr. Padmini Pai from Australia, an internationally renowned expert in mental health as a resource person. I'm immensely pleased with the presence of Dr. Vani Ballal to moderate the session. I am reassured that we will find fresh energy in us at the end of this session. I welcome both of you once again on behalf of the management and place the session back into your hands. Thank you. Welcoming one and all.
Thank you, sir, for your wise words of wisdom. We have with us Dr. Padmini Pai, an eminent scholar, and Dr. Vani Ballal, an expert in mental health as a program moderator. Now, may I request Madam Rakshita, co-convener of this webinar, to introduce the guests to the audience. So, Madam, please.
Good afternoon all. It's my immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Padmini Pai to the participants. Dr. Padmini Pai was the Dean of Sridevi College of Mangalore before migrating to Australia in 2007. She has a PhD in social work and currently works for NSW Health in senior position. She is in charge of several major projects for the health departments ranging over 8,000 staff. Her area of expertise are leadership and well-being. Her husband, Dr. Nagesh Pai, is a leading psychiatrist in Australian Defence Force. Today, Dr. Padmini Pai will be enlightening us with the topic identifying your strengths. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
With her, we also have Dr. Vani R. Ballal, Head of Psychology Department, Dr. G. Shankar Government Women's First Grade College, Udupi, as a moderator. She also has teaching and research experience of more than 20 years. She has served as a chairman of Board of Study of Mangalore University. She is gold medalist in MA in psychology and also author of psychology textbooks. I wholeheartedly welcome you both. Thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I request Dr. Vani Ballal to moderate the session. Please, let's start.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice, said Lord Gautam Buddha. So this is the time we have to identify our strengths and decide not to surrender. I know. I now welcome Dr. Padmini Pai to throw light on how we can identify our strengths. I'm sure this will be a very helpful session for all of us. I welcome Padmini once again. Over to Padmini.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vani. And I would like to thank all the organizers and all the participants as well for giving me this opportunity today to share some of the research that has taken place internationally in this field, and also to see how what we learn in our subjects, what we learn in our colleges, ultimately can be applied to ourselves. And just like what Dr. Manjunath stated, which is a very, very important point, the pandemic has really given us a chance to sit back and redesign, reevaluate, and also rethink what our new reality is going to be. So in the next hour or so, what I would like to request all of you, students, staff, and everyone else who's here joining us in the webinar, in case you have a pen and paper with you, that would be helpful. If you really want to quickly get a pen and paper and jot down a few points, that will be really helpful, because I want to really try to make this experience for you interactive. And at the end of this, for you to go back changed in any way, even if it is at your thought level, if it is at your heart level, if it's at your mind level, for you to just use yourself as the yardstick. When we work in the strength-based space, and when we talk about identifying strength, and that's why I just love this topic. When I had given a few topics to choose from, I'm so glad that the organizers chose identifying strength. So the prerequisite to identifying strength already takes for granted that you have these strengths within you. That's the most important point for us to remember. All these strengths are within us. Unlike a technical skill, sometimes in a technical skill, the expert person knows that skill. And then we go through a series of processes to get to know what that skill is. When we work in a strength-based ways of working, we kind of flip the model. The fact is, we already know, we already have it within us. All that we are going to do to identify is to discover. So literally, if we have to take the word, it's covered, and what we have to do is to discover. And the minute we, in the process of discovering a strength means that you start identifying what your strengths are. So this is very, very fundamental for us to remember, and this has to seed in our heart. We really have to believe that these strengths are within us. I'm glad that Vani quoted Gautama Buddha. For those of us who've got a spiritual bend, for those of us who've got, strong roots where we are, we realize that strengths are so much part of our culture. If we just stop and notice, it's so much part of our culture. Just take 2 generations before. Forget a webinar. Just 2 generations. If I may even just think of my own grandmother, she went only till year 3 or year 4 to school. Then my mom's generation went till year 10. So even if you have to take few generations before, there wasn't formal education, but the strengths were already shining. Isn't it? So if each of you, if I may request you to just take a few seconds and in your own families, or just go back a little bit in your memory and your childhood, and think of one person in your family who really encouraged you. Just think of one person who really encouraged you. It may be, your grandparents, it may be an aunt, it may be a neighbor, it may be somebody. Just think of that one person. I'll pause for about 10 seconds for you to get a real person in your mind. Can I put you on the spot, Manjunath sir? Would you like to share who that person is with us, please?
My father and mother.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Any particular strength in you that they noticed?
The sincerity and hard work. It has been imbibed from them. They have noticed.
Nice. That's really good. Sincerity and hard work, isn't it? So look, when we really bring a real person in mind, we see how that these people have influenced us. Yeah. So we go to the next point. So our very first point is that these strengths are already within us. And all that we have to do when we are talking about identifying a strength is to discover these strengths. So in the process of discovery, those of us who are students, those of us who are staff, in all age groups, there's two things now that we have to remember when we're talking of identifying strengths. One is, as we grow as adults, we have to take more responsibility for ourselves. Yeah. So in our childhood, we definitely need other people to imbibe those things. So like Sir said, his mom and dad, slowly in the process of our socialization, identify strength in us. But as we grow up, we got to take more responsibility for ourselves. And that's where we have to think of two things. One is we identify the strengths within us. And second is we have a social, moral, ethical obligation that when we see a strength in somebody else, we stop and identify it. Okay, so identifying strengths within us and identifying strengths around us. And how are we going to do it is what the whole talk is around. Because there's a very, very fine line when we identify strengths within us. We don't want someone to say, oh God, this person is all the time boasting. And sometimes because we kind of have that mindset, we don't even want to identify strengths within us. But it's such a humbling, beautiful quality that we develop when we know that we can identify these strengths within us, because the best way for strengths is to role model. Yeah, to role model that particular strength. And when somebody identifies that strength in you, to really stop and acknowledge that identification is very important. For me now in Australia, it's night time and I had a big day at work today. And as I was leaving my workplace, my manager said, oh, thank you very much, Padmini. You did this work very sincerely. So the first thing for me is, oh, look, I'm paid to do it. That's my responsibility. But just to stop and say thank you. Thank you for that. Because she was under big pressure to get something going. And she luckily stopped and asked me. And I said, okay, for me, I was thinking I have to be on time, and generally I'm home by 5 o'clock and it's 7:30, and I just made it at 6:45 home. But then I thought, no, stop, finish this and come. And she stopped and acknowledged me. So I just want to give you that example that just happened to me, where somebody acknowledges a strength, then making it small and saying, no, never mind. That person's almost giving you a gift. You got to accept that. Yeah, very, very important. So from that point of view, identifying our own strength, identifying each other's strength is very important. Now, keeping this in mind, I have a few slides that I'm going to go straight into. I'm just going to check with one or two of you whether you can view the screen. Vani, is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So in the outline for the next, say, 15 minutes, I'm going to run through the science of strength, because when we're talking about strength-based ways of working, I really want to impress upon you it's a science and an art. Whether it's in the laboratory or whether it's in publications, a lot of work has been done in the strength space. Finding our own strengths, spotting strengths in each other, the golden mean of strength. Then I want to give you a little model, which is called as the SELF, or the self model. And then ultimately, what does strength-based ways of working do? It really unifies us. It brings us together. Yeah, so this is the outline. When we're talking about the science of strength, now each of these dot points I have just taken the names of authors out to keep it more conversational, but it's a person's lifetime work for each of this theory. Okay, so working in the strength-based space, people like Martin Seligman, and most of you are from the psychology department, I presume. So you would have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've heard about Barbara Fredrickson. Martin Seligman was the father of positive psychology. So many of these dot points are based on individual theories. So when we work in the strength space, number one, it makes us happier. Anything that's positive makes us happier. And when we work in the strength space, we start slowly feeling more and more confident. We have higher self-esteem when we identify strength in each other. Our performance at work definitely is much more better. We have less stress levels. We are more resilient. We are more likely to achieve our goals. We are more effective in developing staff, especially in the workplace, if you're talking about, have high level of energy and vitality. So when you see generally people who are very energetic and productive, they are mostly operating from their strength space. Finding your strength. Discovering your strength is a very personal journey. It's very important for us to acknowledge this. We can't make a song and dance about our strength. It's a very, very personal journey. You need to identify your core strengths, and we need to accept it. When there is acceptance, there is growth. So say, for example, if we were not virtual and if we were all sitting in a room, I would have stopped at this point and asked you, can you identify one of your core strengths? So if you have a pen and paper, can I please request you to just write one of your core strengths? Your core strength may be helpfulness, hardworking, tolerant, sincere. It can be anything. Can you just identify one or two of your core strengths, please? Just write it down and we can go back to it. We also know that there are layers when looking at strength. Yeah, so it's not as simple as we take, but let's go step by step. What do you see as your own core strength? So you have a core strength in front of you. What do those strengths mean to you? And what are you proud of in yourself? Yeah, so you may be proud of, say, being hardworking. You may be proud of being sincere. You may be proud of being honest. So that's why this whole slide is around taking pride in our strength. We got to own our strength, because if we don't own it, we can't take pride in it. A very nice exercise for us to do is what we call as a value audit. Now, I've just chosen 12 most important strengths here. You've got lists and lists of strengths, guys. You can have 200, 300 strengths, but I've taken the 12 most important strengths by doing a quick audit on the social work students who I'm supervising. So we did this exercise last week and I asked them for some help around the webinar today. And these were some of the strengths that they chose. So if you can take a quick glance around these strengths, I can come back to this slide. What I now want you to do is to choose 3 from that list which you think are your personal values, and 3 that you think you use at work. Yeah. So for those of us who are in a workspace, you can think of 3 that you use at work, 3 that are personal. And for students, you can take 3 that are personal and 3 maybe that you use in the classroom. So I'm going to go back to this slide. And can you quickly jot down 3 strengths that just jump out at you, please? I'll pause for a moment here. Vani, can I please request you to share your answers for the three?
Commitment,
Yes.
simplicity, and
Beautiful.
sincerity.
Nice. So would you put that under personal or under work, Vani?
Sincerity and the work.
Yeah.
Commitment under personal values.
Mm, mm.
But then at this point, I have something to ask.
Yes,
Like,
please.
when values are good, why should we have boundaries around good strengths?
Very, very good question. Excellent question. So I'm just going to finish this one slide and come back to what you said, Vani. You asked that question in a very perfect time. So for those of you who are doing their value audit at home, sometimes it's really clear, like Vani ma'am said, these are my personal strengths and these are my work strengths. So Chandrakant sir, can I please ask you to share one of your personal strengths and one of your work strengths, please?
Ma'am, one of my personal strengths, at least first is
international webinar
trust.
Yes, Chandrakant
And
sir.
commitment is the number one work value for me.
Commitment. And personal, sir?
Trust.
Trust. Okay.
Yeah.
So your personal can be trust and your work value is commitment.
Commitment, yes.
Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think Manjunath sir wants to.
Oh, please,
share.
please, Manjunath sir.
Personal value, simplicity, respect for others, sincerity.
Yes. Beautiful. And work,
then work value, accountability, commitment, creativity.
Fantastic.
Nice. Nice. Very good. Thank you. Thank you to the three of you. I can just see the three of you. So I'm sure if we had a chance, we could have opened this up, but being conscious of time. And I'm sure our audience are getting where we are going here. And sometimes what happens, and when I did this exercise, because we wanted to do this value audit and we had some backstage conversations. So when I asked my students to do this, some of them are really clear. These are my personal values. These are my work values. But sometimes this can happen to you. Some may be work values, some may be personal values, but some may be both. So this was a very creative way, and I'm sure Manjunath sir will appreciate this slide because creativity is his value. So if you have to take trust, for example, it may be in both places. Yeah, creativity can be in both. So for some time, it may be very, very clear that this is personal and this is work, especially when we start work initially. So say, for example, accountability. We may be very, very, in a new situation, very accountable. Isn't it? We want to create an impression, it's our job, we've got high moral standards, and they may be very clear. Now, for example, creativity, I'm not at all surprised Manjunath sir spoke about creativity. Sometimes when you relax in your role, and you've done your role for a long time, you see how you can bring the personal into the professional. And that's the best part about strengths. Coming now to Vani's question, if we are talking about strength as being something positive, why should we have boundaries around it? Very, very important question. Our strength is only our strength if it is our strength. I repeat that. Our strength is only our strength if it is our strength, because many a time we have to remember our strength can become our weakness. Very easily our strength can become our weakness. Okay, how many times? Go back to family. Let's just park work or students. Go back to family. And because we've got many students here, have you ever said to your mom and dad, oh, why should it be me who's helping at home? Why can't my brother do it? Yeah, why should it be me who's going to the shops? Yeah, why should it be me to do this? Why can't it be somebody else? Or even in your family, all the time people are calling you. And then your mom or dad may say, why is everybody calling you? Is there nobody else to do that work? Isn't it? So that's why we really got to remember that our strength is our strength, only if it remains as our strength. So to go back to Vani's question, it's very important to have boundaries because our strength has to remain as our strength. Otherwise, our strength can become our weakness. And sometimes we can get fed up with ourselves if our strength doesn't remain our strength. Yeah? Does that answer your question, Vani?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at this stage, Vani?
So can you give a real life example when you have to choose between two strengths?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to choose one over the other? Is there any reason? Can you explain by giving real life example?
Okay, okay. So I'm remembering of a work example because I work in a hospital. With patients, there's a very big emphasis on confidentiality. And I'm sure those of us who are in the psychology field, we know the importance of confidentiality, isn't it? The cornerstone of our job in psychology is confidentiality. So to give a work example, when I was doing a family conference, I came to know that from one of my really good work colleagues, there was breach of confidentiality. And because the family came and told me, it was very hard for me because we work in a multidisciplinary team. And I thought, oh my God, what do I do now? There was breach of confidentiality. But quickly, I had to go to my own knowledge of strength. So what I had to do here was not use courage, but I had to use tact. Because if I used courage and I went and asked my colleague, hey, why didn't you open your mouth and tell this to the patient? You're not supposed to tell the patient. Then it would have become a match, yeah, a power struggle. But all I had to do was I had to use tact, and I had to go and talk about this situation to my supervisor. And then my manager dealt with it. Yes? So that's the first example that's coming to my mouth, to my mind. Anything more to speak about that, Vani? Unmute, please. Vani, can you unmute?
Yeah. One of the participants raised a hand. Just want to check who is it. Give me a second.
Yes, no problem.
Can may come now. Okay, you can carry on now.
Okay, okay. So if there's any other questions from our participants, Vani is having an eye, so you can use the chat box as well. The next slide is almost the crux. The most important slide is the next slide. So I would really want all of us to concentrate on this slide. When we're finding our signature strengths, so all of us have got all the strengths, but some of us have got signature strengths. Yeah, and slowly it's about discovering your signature strengths. The most important 3 questions that we need to ask when we use our strength: does it show up in your action? So do you use your strength in your performance? Because there's no use saying, I'm really a very honest person, and then after that, you can't keep one thing in your mouth. Yeah? Or I can't say I'm really generous, and then somebody comes to you and then you are like, oh, not today, tomorrow. So many a time then it becomes political, isn't it? Yeah? Or says, I'm really very kind. And we see this a lot. Somebody says, I am such a kind person. In 5 minutes, you're shouting on top of your head at somebody else. Yeah? So does your strength show in your performance? Number 2, when you do your strength, when you practice your strength, does it give you energy? Because when you're practicing your strength, at the end of it, if you're drained, then it's a light bulb moment for you. Yeah? And we see this so much. I'm not sure what's coming on the screen here, but I'll continue. I'm really wanting for you, especially as students, sometimes you're so motivated that you over-exercise the strength. And at the end of it, you have no energy, isn't it? So completely involved in something, then by the time it's in the end of it, you're not there at all. Doesn't this happen sometimes during college days? It sounds like so much so before. Yeah, I remember when I was teaching in Sri Devi College, full of energy in the beginning, on that day sick. When the real thing has to happen, not there, isn't it? So number 1 is in your performance. Number 2 is when you're using your strength, does it give you energy? And number 3 is how often do you use it? So these are the three main indicators. All the time, all of us have all strengths, but we got to keep asking ourselves, are we using it in our performance, in our energy, and then are we using it? Yeah? Any other questions at this point before we continue?
Yeah. Is there any practical steps? This strength need to be natural. Like you said, sometimes we express that we have that kind of strength. When it comes to action or activities, it is absent. So can it be naturally expressed?
Very, very good point. And I think this is where, if two of us have got the same strength, the way we express it is very different, isn't it? Yeah? So some people may be very vocal in the way they are. Some people may be action people. Some people may be doers. Some people may be extroverted. Some people may be introverted. So to answer Vani's question, one model that I always think is very helpful is the head, heart, hand, and feet model. Okay, so just remember your head, your heart, your hands, and your feet. So if you're a very head person, the way you express your strength may be more in the thought. You know, you're very thoughtful, you're planning around that strength. Yeah. If you're using your heart, you're much more of a feeling person. Yeah. If you're using your hands, you're much more of a doing person. And when you're using your feet, it's doing as well as progressing. That's a good model for us to keep in our mind as well when we're talking about using our strength. So moving on now, spotting strength in other people. So like I said before we started, it's very important for us to use our own strengths, and it's very important for us to spot strength in each other also. Being curious about our own change and being a role model to each other. So if you've got staff, especially in this area, it's so important for us when we notice a strength in our students, in our colleagues, you know, in our work situation, in our home situation. It's very important for us to spot it in each other. Strength spotting is catching other people doing the right thing. Very often we catch people doing the wrong thing. Yeah, because our mind has a negativity bias. We all have a negativity bias. It's very, very easy for us to catch people doing the wrong thing. But when we're talking about strength spotting, we are catching people doing the right thing. Strength spotting is also being the first person to identify the strength in other people. So here we can always talk about, in strength spotting, how do we do this in our day-to-day? And that's where I want to go to this point here, the example. So instead of saying, don't just say, you did a good job. Many times we do that, isn't it? Thank you, you did a very good job. But we can say, I noticed how quickly you connected with and settled the patient. I'm just giving a hospital-related example here, which put the family at ease and the ward became more peaceful. Yeah. So in this example, we see that a person is giving a compliment to another person, how quickly you connected. So it may be in a home situation. Say a child is crying, for example. Yeah. You can just say, oh, look, be patient, or don't cry. That's one way. Or you can really say, thank you for your patience when mommy is heating the milk for you. Or thank you. It was so kind the way you dealt with your younger brother or your younger sibling. Children respond amazingly to strength-based language. Generally, we think it's adults, but children really, really respond. And when we use strength-based language, many a time we can even use the strength not just after an event is over or even before that. Yeah, I take kids classes every week. Now we've stopped because of COVID, but I have these little Indian children who come and we just do, you know, storytelling and some story from Mahabharata or Ramayana. And all these children, as soon as they come, there are about 18, 19 kids. I always say that they got to be silent. And when they sit quietly, I always say, thank you for your patience. Okay, even before they do any nakra, I'm telling them that first only. Yeah. So we're kind of identifying a strength. Thank you for, many times I tell them, you know, Padmini auntie is really tired now. All that I need is 5 minutes of silence. Let's all sit and meditate. So when they're doing something for me, they feel happy that they're doing it. And then individually take their names and recognize. Yeah. So when you're talking about strength-based language, it's about how we can identify a strength in our conversations. At this point, any other question, Vani, before I go ahead?
Yeah, two participants have questions. They say nowadays we see only exhibiting physical strength. No importance is given to values. So how to find strength at workplace? How we can go about it?
Okay. I think the whole world gets answers for this question from Mahatma Gandhi. So when we talk about the physical strength, and I know physical strength is very, very important, but then when you are strong within yourself, okay, and all of us, how many of us, 315 people as of now are watching this talk. Imagine the ripple effect that we can have if we have identified our own inner strength. Many a times in the strength-based ways of working, physical strength, or, you know, people who talk the loudest, like we say, crying baby gets milk, isn't it? So that sometimes can become the rule rather than an exception. That does not mean when you're using your strength, you have to be quiet. But when we moderate the way we are talking in that situation, we definitely have a big impact. Yeah. So even in the society where physical strength is very much the way to go, how can we be game changers? And one way that we can do it is to really identify our inner strength and then exhibit that strength. And sometimes, like we know, a single leaf cannot provide shade, but all the leaves together creates a branch. All the branches together create a tree, and that tree provides shade. So when we come together in our strength space, definitely we can make a difference.
Padmini,
Any other? Yes.
Yeah. Like, why is it so important to be careful of our language and negative thinking, especially for students in today's times?
Yeah, very, very good question, Vani. Especially in an impressionable age for all of us, it is so important for us about the positive language, because we have to realize that strengths actually give us energy. Same way as much as strength gives us energy, negative words have a very deep impact on us. So we all know, being in the field of psychology, neurons that wire together, fire together. And all the time, if we are surrounded by negative talk, it has a big impact on our self-esteem. And that's why positive language, strength-based language is very, very, very important. Extremely important. We only know the value of it when it doesn't happen. Now, students may think everyone around us is rude. What can we do? And that's why it's important for us as adults to take responsibility for ourselves. Yeah? How am I going to improve my self-talk? How am I going to bring about the change? Where am I going to keep an eye on one or two of my friends? And if something negative has happened, can I be the strength person there? Yeah? And many times, even as adults, when things go wrong, see, that's what we got to realize, guys. Our mind, our brain is created to take negative. Yeah? Because of that good capacity of our brain to spot danger, that's why we are alive. Like our heart is beating, you know, each of our organs have a job to do. The job of a brain is to protect us from danger. And if you have to see, that's our primordial brain. When we were in the forest, our brain was alert. That's why even when you go to sleep, small noise and you get up, don't you? Yeah? Because the brain keeps our body safe. But to combat that negativity bias when it's not required, That's where we use strength-based ways of working. Any other question, Mani?
I found another question, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Somebody asked that how to,
Yes.
we have identified our strength, but
Yeah.
using that strength, how to overcome the stress?
Yes, yes, yes.
They want to
Very
know,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, very, very good question. I'm going to go to 2 or 3 slides where we have some more suggestions, and I'm going to come back to this question if it is okay. Yeah? How are we going to
Yes,
use strengths
okay.
to overcome? Okay. Can you all see some lines on the PowerPoint, Manjunath?
I think maybe you are moving the this one, mouse.
Okay, ma'am, clear.
Me?
You can proceed, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, because I don't even have a mouse on my laptop here.
Okay, ma'am,
Anyway,
okay.
yeah, so I'll come back to how to use strengths in stress. I'm holding that thought. So when we're talking about the golden mean of strength, it is about balance. Yeah. So when we're talking about using our strengths, especially in the stressful situation, it's so important for us to know which strength and which strength we got to use. So going back to Vani's question about why do we have to have boundaries, when we use strengths, strengths doesn't change the situation, isn't it? So just as an example, say for example, Vani and me are really good friends, and suddenly I get angry with her, right? I'm getting angry here. She can't change that situation. Why? Because anger is coming from me. Yeah. Now, more and more she lets me influence. She lets my anger influence. More and more she's going to be stressed. So that's why when we use strengths, we can't change the situation, but definitely how we react to the situation, we are in control. Yeah, very important point. Many times the external situation we may or may not be able to change, but when we make a change in our mind, the way we react to that situation, we are still in control. Yeah. So if I'm now yelling, kicking and screaming, then she feels even more helpless. But if she says, maybe she had a bad day, what is happening to her? So if she makes that, it's not me because I was polite, I've done everything, but still that's the reaction. What she's doing simultaneously is she's making those changes in her mind or his mind. And we do it very easily in a patient space, isn't it? So say, for example, we're working in mental health and there's a patient who's unwell. Don't we make that change in our mind? It's very unpleasant, but still we make those changes. So especially in a stressful situation, to answer that question, Manjunath, how are we going to pause? How are we going to put self-care in place? How are we going to see which is the strength that we require? Now, in the pandemic situation, we all are in our homes. So sharing may not be a very important strength that we may be able to use, or helpfulness. I really want to help, but it's a lockdown, for example. But already I can send a nice text to somebody, or I can make a phone call. What are the other things that I can do to create the balance? So that's where when we talk about the golden mean of strength, we are talking about in an excessive situation, what are we planning to do around this area? And thinking about our context, like in our present context, who our audience are, and also what is our need. Yeah, so the context, audience, and need is a very important factor for us to think about. Any more questions? I'm mindful we've got 10 more minutes to go. Any other questions at this stage? Or continue, Vani?
You better continue.
Continue? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the model that I want to share with you is the SELF. So it's a very easy model. So think of yourself. Yeah. So when we work in the strength-based ways of working, about our self-awareness, very important for us. I'm going back to our first point. What is my strength? So like Sir spoke about sincerity, or what Vani spoke about, commitment. So we got to be aware what our strengths are. So for us to explore our strengths, sometimes it's very nice. Even after this webinar, if your friends are listening, you can always say, text me a few of my strengths. Yeah. So each other you can ask, because sometimes it's nice to see how other people see you. in that strength space as well. Yeah, so I'm just looking 342 participants. Imagine if even 2 of you find buddies and you explore what your strengths are. Then launching, making your strengths count. Yeah, so say you're a very shy person, but then you really want to develop your strength of courage. Now, when you're asked for a feedback, for example, you can always give your feedback. Yeah, so how are you going to make your strength count? Yeah, and how are you going to flourish? So when we are flourishing, we are future gazing. So future gazing is, this is another beautiful activity that you can do as students. What do you want to be in the next 1 month? What do you want to be in the next 6 months? Yeah, where do you see yourself going? What are the strengths that are required to get there? That's a very nice way that you can use this model in the strength-based ways of working as well. So just another few more points for us to remember when we're doing strength work, to really have focus, because otherwise it can just become thought and thinking. So if you can just focus and see, you know, make a real narrow focus. Right now, this is the situation I'm having. You know, my friend was upset me, or a good situation. Go down to that real narrow focus and see what strength you require, and do the big dreaming, okay? In a year's time, now, you know, because of the pandemic, it's about finding a job, different ways of thinking, anything. Narrow and broad focus. And for us to remember that strength is a journey, okay? And the impact of that strength will be on ourselves, and the impact of the strength is going to be on others as well. So the new ways for us to start thinking to be dynamic is, over time, we learn new strengths. The context keeps changing, our context keeps changing. We adapt to our surroundings. We can develop our existing strengths, whatever your existing strengths are. Sometimes we combine our strengths. You can combine 2, 3 strengths to make it as one strength. We balance different strengths, and we have more awareness around our strengths. Yeah. So generally, this is where we go in the strength space. So this is my story around strengths. I would stop here and see how far we want to go from here.
Padmini?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a question. Like online classes are an obstacle for teachers to find strengths in students. So in this context, is there any specific advice for teachers and maybe students on a strength-based language?
Beautiful. So going back to that slide where we were talking about just then saying a good job, yeah, you can add in your sentence one more strength word. So say, for example, if your teachers have really gone out of the way to do something for you, from the student's point of view, after the class, you can give that sincere feedback, isn't it? Thank you, sir, for doing so much for me. Yeah? Or for being on time, or for being punctual. That is also a dopamine hit, isn't it? So when we're talking about gratitude, when we're talking about strength, it's not just ourselves, it helps ourselves and it helps another person too. So really, many times, all of us are good people, guys. If you got to take the theory of Carl Rogers, he spoke about the basic good in all of us, isn't it? So many times when we think about something positive, now we've got a phone in our hand 24/7. Nothing stops us from giving a feedback, isn't it, to your teacher. And even if you have this thing thinking, oh God, what will that person think? Do that person think I need a favor? See, all those are our negative biases, isn't it? When there's a good thought in you, action it. And same way for the teachers as well. Yeah, really to break down our tasks and stop and acknowledge each other, or touch base and give that 5 minutes and say, I always do it when I meet somebody. I always say, yes, all these are the tasks. Let it be. How are you going today? How are you feeling today? And many a time, just providing that space, providing that silence, providing that inner calm, not rush all the time. Yeah, that's also using your strength in your silence.
There are many questions pouring in. So I would like to put all those questions in one like I would ask you, do you think everyone is good at something?
Absolutely. 100%. In every strength-based ways of working, going back to the first point, whatever it is, even if you take from the justice point of view, you take even criminology, you take whatever, the basis is that the fact that we are born as human beings, we have strengths. How are we going to discover it is most important. Many a time in today's society, everything has to be shining, isn't it, for strengths to happen? That's not true at all. And one thing that we can use in our strength-based ways of working is we are concerned about a lot of things, outer circle. Yeah, pandemic has taught us that. You can sit and worry for the whole world. Then you go into what can you influence? And in influence, what can you control? Like today, there's been 100 things for all of you. I'm so pleased looking at that number. Our number has gone to 355 people have prioritized here because that's something that you could control, isn't it? And from this, even immediately after the webinar is over, spend 5 minutes to jot down your points. What is it that you've learned about yourself? What is it that you've learned about each other? That's what you can influence. And then slowly, when we control and influence things, we can definitely talk about the different concerns. And this was another thing that I prepared to say, how we use strength-based ways of working, not just in the COVID space. For some of you who are aware where I come from in Australia, beginning of the years was bushfires for us. I'm sure you would have seen the Australian bushfire. Yeah. So I was redeployed to a hospital to support the staff around the bushfire. And as the bushfire, and we put strength-based ways of working as a two-speed reality for us. As we were doing with bushfires, COVID happened. Yeah. And from those staff in the hospital till today, the thankfulness is because they had wellness in place. The way they have coped with is because they had wellness in place. Yeah. So all that I would like to say, almost we are coming to the end of our presentation. I've just put a sentence there where I really want to thank you for attending and for listening, and to all of you for prioritizing your time and your interest in being a fantastic audience. Yeah. And I mean that really sincerely from my heart. But also I want you in that sentence to pick out that whether I've been able to talk to you, whether I've not been able to talk to you, you have been attentive. Yeah. You have been considerate. You are listening. And of course, you have prioritized your time. Your institution can do anything. Yeah. There's so much of backstage that has happened for us to pull this webinar together, just for us to spend time acknowledging that. And if some of you can just say thank you to Vani madam, or, sincerely do your feedback, whatever that you do is your way of expressing your gratitude and thankfulness, which is also a strength-based ways of working straight away.
Thank you, Padmini. There are many more questions pouring in. Time is
another
not
question,
permitting us to ask these questions. So for me, as well as the participants, what I feel the take home of this webinar is our efforts at self-improvement is always centered around our areas of weakness, improving our areas of weakness. But it is equally important to recognize our strengths and learn to use them to our advantage. That is what I feel is the take-home message from this webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much, Padmini, and all the organizers for giving me also an opportunity to be the part of this webinar.
Thanks, you, Vani. And even if we want to open it up 5 minutes to participants, I'm happy.
Okay.
Chandrakant sir, Is there any questions to be asked?
Yeah. Well, there is one interesting question, ma'am. Last, but somebody is asking, I have identified my strength and I want to know how to maintain that strength for the lifetime. I think it may take some time, but
That's okay.
we can answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to be respectful of participants, we're just having a little informal chat. So people stay on or people go, if that's okay. Yeah. So when we identify our strength, one is to have the conviction that in whichever situation, I won't give up that strength. And sometimes, like lessons of the geese, we know that one strength may come in front and one strength may go behind. Yeah.
Yes.
And to see which are the other strengths we need to hold on to that strength. Because as our situation changes, sometimes we may have to rest a strength. So say, for example, if you're very tolerant all the time, that strength can become a weakness, isn't it? So therefore, for you to be tolerant, maybe you have to practice moderation, or maybe you have to practice courage. So that's the way we balance strengths. And also to acknowledge that, look, don't make strength your burden. Many times I see that people who are very, very strength conscious, it becomes a burden. And if the joy goes out of your strength, then it's time to just put it down gently and practice another strength for some time. Then you can always keep your strength nice and fresh. The audience are a bit camera shy yet.
Sir, proceed. Chandrakant.
Hello.
Sir, proceed, sir.
Hello. Madam, actually, we wanted to know many things from you, but unfortunately, from the time constraints, we are concluding here. And this was a very productive and fruitful session. And now I request our IQAC coordinator, Professor Nagabhushan, Head of Hindi Department, to propose the vote of thanks. Sir Nagabhushan, sir, please.
Okay, sir. Honorable Chairperson, esteemed guests, and the dear participants, I deem it a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this international webinar successful. I thank the chairperson of this international webinar, Dr. Manjunath Ekutian, principal of our college, for his constant support in arranging a series of webinars in the college. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I would like to thank Dr. Padmini Pai, resource person of this webinar. Madam, years of your research, knowledge, depth of understanding, and your ability to present the subject in such an interesting way produced one of the most memorable evenings history of college. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam. Gave justice to your
I thank
topic.
Dr.
Thank you.
Vani Bhayan